Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. We're going to do a little mental exercise here today. We're going to put you in the shoes of Mordecai the Jew and to Queen Esther, and we're just going to imagine that you are trying to solve the problem here that Mordecai and Esther are trying to solve in the book of Esther, chapter 8. Okay, so here's the deal. There's an edict that was issued that said that all of your people, the Jews, it's going to be open season on the Jews. You can kill all the Jews that you want on one given day, and the day's already been selected. The edict's already been sent out. It's irrevocable. That's the way the laws work here. And there's going to be a lot of ancient ethnic hatred that is going to motivate your neighbors to want to kill you if you're Jewish, I guess, apparently. And there's also going to be the added bonus that they get to plunder the people they kill. So, I mean, all the people you hang out with, your kids play soccer with them, the mailman, I mean, you're making nice with these people most of the time, but you got a really awkward 11-month run-up to the moment of this day where they get to kill you. Super, super uncomfortable. But then the guy who issues the edict gets voted out of office, or more specifically, gets impaled and put up on a gigantic pole. Doesn't matter how he got there. He's gone, and now you are the one who gets to write the next edict, but the edict can't be that you canceled the previous edict. So what would you write? How would you get this done? Now, you and I, of course, we're going to write whatever we write from the perspective of a relatively comfortable, modern perspective with modern sensibilities. And so we just got to acknowledge that. We got to take that into account. But what would you write? I thought of a few solutions here. Maybe you could write up an edict that says we're going to take a whole bunch of money from the royal treasury or even from now dead Haman's estate, and we're going to pay for one great big grand day of get out of town on kill day. We're going to have a great big huge Jewish party weekend where everybody just goes away to some country outside the boundaries of this edict. We've worked out a deal with a neighboring country or kingdom, something like that. Okay. It's not very practical because people would have to travel a long way. There's not really a lot of time to make that work. Also, I suppose then if the enemies of the Jews just went to wherever they were going to be, and they'd all be in one place. I generally like the moment in a movie where somebody goes up to somebody else and is like, hey, you just need to be out of town for the next few days. Things are going to get crazy. I mean, it's a nonviolent solution. I like the idea, just not very practical here. So I don't think we could write that one. Maybe you have better ideas than me. Maybe you immediately thought of better counter orders that you could write that can't just undo the edict of the king. But let's think about a couple more here. Okay, what if you made a rule that was like, nope, you're still totally allowed to attack all the Jews, but it can only be with a certain list of weapons. And the weapons are flowers and sponges and a bunch of other things that would be really non-lethal and even kind of whimsical to sort of make a mockery out of people attacking you, kind of like when Thanos turned Peter Quill's gun into some kind of bubble dispenser or something. I thought that was kind of cute. Like, look at your pitiful weapon. It's a bubble dispenser now. You can have some kind of thing like that, but I don't know that that's actually going to work if you're still allowing it to be like a free and open attack. It feels like this is going to spiral and deteriorate into Crazyville. And really the problem with the edict in its original state, as we read about back here in Esther chapter 3, is that the edict doesn't give the Jews permission to do anything. They have to sit there and take it. They're not allowed to fight. The government has a monopoly on violence. The king has a monopoly on violence. And the deal here is that this original edict, it doesn't allow any kind of response from the Jewish people. They, I guess, just have to accept their fate. Dispatches were sent by the couriers to all the king's provinces with, and this is Haman's order, with the order to destroy, kill, and annihilate all the Jews, young and old, women and little children, on a single day, the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, and to plunder their goods. That's it. That's the whole edict. So there's no order here to the Jews to do anything other than just be on the receiving end of this deal. This really is a bizarre order in the first place. And I've mentioned it several times, but part of the bizarreness of it is that it could be issued and there would be a whole subset within your population who would be like, awesome, I have been counting down the days until this bit of news would come down the pike, and now, finally, I get to do this horrible thing. But apparently this group of people existed, and they were sharpening their knives, just delighted at the opportunity to get to do this. Now, it's important to note, the author of Esther has given us a timeline here to help us game out and understand the tension and how much time we have to work with here. So when Mordecai and Esther are confronted with the opportunity to write a counter edict, that is happening in June 25th, of presumably, what would that be, 474 BC? And the day of bloodshed that Haman ordained, or that the casting of lots ordained, was to be carried out on March 7th, 473. So you still got a better part of a year here for whatever kind of edict or counter edict you might be cooking up in your mind as I pose this question to you, as I put you in the shoes of Mordecai and Esther. What else could you do? I guess you could order the military to step in and prevent all violence on that day, but that's really effectively canceling the previous order, because you're using the power of the king and the immediate troops of the king to stop people from doing what the king ordered them to do. So I'm not sure that gets it done. I don't know. I don't know what you do here. It seems like this ball is rolling, and the best solution obviously would just be for King Xerxes to pawn off this as some kind of mistake, or use his dad's trick and be like, no, a shapeshifter took my ring. It was dang shapeshifters again. It looked just like me, but we caught him, and it was the vile Haman. He had shapeshifting powers, because that is apparently a thing that people would believe, and that is not going to happen anymore. We got that lie snuffed out. I guess you could do that. But theoretically, there really was a value against lying in Achaemenid Persia. Like, lying really was grossly frowned upon. So maybe Xerxes would have found that objectionable. Whatever the case, it would have been the easiest thing would have been to just say something went wrong with the order, and we're not going to do that. I'm sorry, you don't get to kill anybody. Clearly, as we've determined from the text of Esther chapter 8, the king is unwilling to do that and is outsourcing the solution to the problem to Mordecai and Esther, who now need to come up with something. And I'm going to sleep on it. I'm going to give it another day. I'm going to see what you have to say, maybe in the discussion, which for now is still happening over on Reddit, but they're changing some things with Patreon. They're making that into more of a hub for all things related to a corner of the internet. So I'm entertaining what it might look like to use that more. I'll get back to you on all of that business. For now, the conversation is still over at the subreddit on reddit.com, which you can link to down below. I'd be interested to hear what other options you think there might have been. But whether in the next 24 hours, you and I can come up with some kind of excellent, constructive proposal for how this could be handled differently, it doesn't matter, because there is a counter edict that gets issued. And the counter edict at its core is simply going to be based on permission for the Jews to simply take up arms and defend themselves on that appointed day. The Jews are not going to be given permission to preempt it and go around and figure out who was probably going to attack them. It's going to be just one day to rule them all, one day to sort it out. Everything's going to come down to that based on the verbiage of this edict that gets written and the solution that Mordecai and Esther choose to take to the situation. It's an interesting thing, isn't it, when you have limitless options or near limitless options in front of you? It can be really difficult to come up with ideas. That can be sort of paralyzing. And it's a strange thing how when I'm just armchair quarterbacking or criticizing someone, I can be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done that. But when the question gets bounced back to me, okay, what would you do? That can be pretty paralyzing as well. Well, I don't know. I hadn't really thought about what I would do. I just thought about reasons I could criticize you. So this is a really tricky situation, and it looks like it's ticketed for ending in bloodshed one way or the other. And again, we'll look at the specifics of how Mordecai and Esther choose to play this thing mañana. Hey, as I mentioned last time around, Nehemiah is up next. I thought really hard about just doing Matthew again. I thought, and there's some stuff that we kind of missed there. Maybe another quick 800 episode overview would help us to go and pick up those little morsels that maybe slipped through the cracks. But ultimately, I think we're just going to have to be content with the 800 episodes we already have on Matthew, and we're going to stay in the Old Testament just a little bit longer. There is a lot more to be had in terms of how the story of Esther plays out, how it leaks right over into the next reign, the reign of Xerxes' son, Artaxerxes. And there's this huge change in the religious mentality of the Jewish people that comes on the heels of the end of Esther and what happens in solving this problem we've been talking about today, and in what happens in the book of Nehemiah. And this religious sea change that occurs, I think, will really help us understand why the world looked the way it did, why the Jewish mentality was what it was, why the Pharisees and Sadducees were what they were at the time that Jesus shows up in the book of Matthew. So we will be going to the New Testament next, and the time we spend in Nehemiah is going to help really set us up for success there. I am printing up new notebooks that I'm going to mail out to everybody who supports the podcast at any level. I am also printing up something else that is real cool, kind of a little collector's thing, and I don't want to tell you more about that just yet. Thank you so much again to everybody who supports the podcast now, or ever has, or ever might. I'm so grateful to all of you who've done that, so grateful to all of you who haven't. I just love that we get to do this together. All right, more on this edict next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.